Welcome, curious minds, to the Uncanny Valley podcast. We're your guides into some of the most, intricate and surprising stories you'll find lurking deep in source material. Our mission: to give you that shortcut to being really well informed. We uncover those hidden gems, the surprising facts,
Yeah.
the stuff beneath the surface.
Exactly. And today we're digging into the world of a true master of observation, of deduction, a figure who, maybe more than anyone, really taught us to look closer, to question the obvious and to find what he called the truly singular and bizarre in what might just seem, commonplace.
Yeah, we're exploring cases that even he described as whimsical, striking, and sometimes downright unnatural. And these aren't just, sensational crimes. They're these unique human puzzles. They reveal the extraordinary that's hiding right there in plain sight. So if you're ready for some serious aha moments, join us. Let's unpack stories that are, frankly, far more daring than anything imagination could cook up. Okay, so our first stop, it takes us to the gritty, unexpected corners of London. We're far from the drawing rooms here. We're in a place called Upper Swandam Lane.
Right, not exactly Baker Street, is it? It's described as, pretty squalid, opium dens, shadowed figures, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And here we find this mystery that, at first glance, it looks like a straightforward, tragic murder.
Yeah.
But it turns into something far more uncanny. It really subverts your expectations.
It centers around the disappearance of Mr. Neville St. Clair.
A respectable man, right? Well-to-do family man, lives out in the countryside.
Yes, from Surrey. His wife, Mrs. St. Clair, she's in London on business, and just by chance, she happens to be passing through this notorious lane.
And she looks up, and she sees him, her husband.
In a second-floor window
Oh.
of an opium den, of all places.
She said he looked terribly agitated, waving his hands frantically.
And then he just vanishes, as she puts it, as if plucked back by some irresistible force, pulled back from the window.
Chilling. And even in that panic, she notices something specific. He's wearing some dark coat, but no collar or tie.
His bare throat is visible, a detail that seems small, but it becomes crucial later.
So the circumstances, the location, it screams foul play, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The police get involved, though the proprietor of the den resists letting them in at first. And when they finally get into the room, what do they find?
All of St. Clair's clothes. His respectable clothes. Boots, socks, hat, even his watch.
Neatly folded, hidden behind a curtain.
Yeah.
But his coat is missing, the one his wife saw him wearing.
And worse, there are these ominous bloodstains on the windowsill.
Right. And then later, the missing coat turns up.
In the Thames, at high tide. And it's been weighted down with coins.
Suggesting someone wanted it to sink, tried to make it sink. Which
Yeah.
implies, it implies a body was meant to go with it.
So for the police, this looks open and shut. Murder, disposal of the body.
And they think they have their prime suspect right there on the scene.
Exactly. It seems like a classic case. Respectable man in a bad place, vanishes, clothes left, blood, weighted coat in the river. Textbook.
But then there are the other people in the room.
Right. Two others. One is the Lascar, the manager of the den.
Yeah, a term used then for sailors or laborers from the Indian subcontinent, often running places like this.
And the other figure,
Yeah,
he's described as a crippled wretch of hideous aspect.
Hugh Boone, a professional beggar.
So naturally, the police focus on Boone.
He has bloodstains on his right shirt sleeve.
And when they ask him about it,
He just calmly points to a little cut on his ring finger near the nail, says the blood came from that.
he denies everything about St. Clair, claims the clothes are a mystery to him.
Completely.
Huh?
He even says Mrs. St. Clair must have been mad or dreaming.
It all points to him, but
Yeah.
something feels off, doesn't it?
And this is where it really twists, where the uncanny part comes in. While Boone is being held, probably going to be charged with murder.
Mrs. St. Clair gets a letter.
From her husband, her missing husband.
And the crucial thing is the postmark. It was posted today from Gravesend after he disappeared.
This is where Holmes steps in, and his observations are just brilliant. He looks at the letter, the envelope.
What does he notice?
The envelope is coarse. There's a dirty thumbprint on it.
Okay.
And it was sealed by someone who'd been chewing tobacco. You can tell from the gum.
But the letter inside.
Undeniably, Neville St. Clair's handwriting.
Wow. So a letter from a supposedly dead man posted after he vanished.
Exactly. This single impossible detail. It just unravels everything, the whole murder theory.
It forces them to completely rethink the entire situation. It's not a simple murder anymore.
Yeah.
It's something else entirely.
It's a deep psychological puzzle. How can this be?
And this is where our detective, Holmes, really shows his genius, right? Seeing what everyone else misses.
Absolutely. He doesn't just collect facts, he weighs them. He connects dots that seem totally unrelated.
Like things from outside the immediate crime scene.
Yes. For instance, he recalls this very specific, peculiar description of a man he'd heard about. Included details like the whiskers, the glasses, the voice.
Okay, but how is that relevant?
Well, he reveals that description came up when he was inquiring about a particular typewriter.
A typewriter? What's that got to do with anything?
He explains that, in his view, a typewriter has really quite as much individuality as a man's handwriting. He'd previously found one with trivial but characteristic defects, little flaws that made its typing unique.
So he's saying even machines have tells, like forensic analysis, but for typewriters.
Exactly. He wasn't just focused on the machine, but the unique signature it produced, revealing the specific person using it. It's about the pattern, the habit, the trace left behind, even if the appearance changes.
That's incredible foresight. So he connects this idea of hidden identity.
Yes, and he applies it here. He also correctly figures out that Hugh Boone's cut finger was the source of the bloodstains. Boone wasn't injured in a struggle. He likely cut himself deliberately, which means Boone's initial story is a lie.
Okay, so Boone's lying,
Mm-hmm.
and the letter proves St. Clair's alive. What else?
The window, the only apparent way out. And the tide, the timing of the tide when the coat was found, all these details start fitting together, but not in the way the police thought.
It's like he takes all these random seeming bits, the thumbprint, the chewed gum, the cut finger, the clothes, the typewriter quirks, and just rearranges them.
Mm-hmm. He deduces the truth by eliminating the impossible. Murder seemed obvious, but the letter made it impossible.
So whatever's left, no matter how improbable.
Must be the truth.
And the truth is? No, it's pretty shocking.
It really is. Holmes goes to the police station. He confronts Hugh Boone. He washes Boone's face with a sponge soaked in water. The grotesque disguise melts away. The crippled wretch, Hugh Boone, is Neville St. Clair.
No, the respectable gentleman is the beggar.
Yes, it's the ultimate uncanny moment. The familiar hidden inside the grotesque. The victim is the chief suspect in disguise.
That completely turns everything on its head. Appearance versus reality.
It forces you to question everything you thought you knew about the case and about identity itself.
Wow. So why? Why would a respectable man do this? The confession must be something else.
Oh, it is. It's a fascinating story of deception and, yeah, the powerful lure of easy money. St. Clair explains he used to be a reporter. On an evening paper,
Okay.
his editor wanted a series of articles on begging in the metropolis.
And St. Clair volunteered.
He did. He mentioned he had some theatrical skills. Apparently, he had been famous in the green room for my skill. That's the actor's lounge, backstage.
So he used his acting ability to create a disguise.
An incredibly convincing one. He says he painted my face, made a good scar, even fixed one side of my lip in a twist by the aid of a small slip of flesh-colored plaster, added a wig, the right clothes.
He became Hugh Boone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then came the shocker, the reason he kept doing
The
it.
money.
The money. He tells Holmes that in just 7 hours of begging as Hugh Boone, he made 26 shillings and 4 pence.
How much was his regular salary?
Only £2 a week. That's 40 shillings.
So, wait, in less than a day, he made more than half his weekly pay.
Precisely. The profit was immense, irresistible. It just drew him in deeper and deeper into this double life.
So his disappearance at the window.
Was just him making a super fast change back into Hugh Boone when his wife unexpectedly showed up?
He panicked.
Completely. Cut his hand quickly to make the bloodstains look plausible, then threw his St. Clair clothes out the window.
And weighted the coat, hoping it would sink and take the identity of Neville St. Clair with it.
He thought he could just vanish into this new, profitable identity, leave the old one behind forever.
So technically,
Yeah.
no crime was committed, right? Not murder, anyway.
Legally, no. But the deception was profound. Imagine the impact on his family.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it, how many other Hugh Boones are out there?
Yeah.
People living double lives, hidden behind these carefully built facades.
Hidden because most people, as Holmes would say, are part of the unobservant public. They don't look closely.
So the lesson for us, for you listening, is don't just trust general impressions.
Exactly. Concentrate yourself upon details. The smallest oddity, the thing that doesn't quite fit. That can be the key.
It helps you see through things, whether it's in business or relationships or just understanding the world a bit better. Okay, so from a man hiding himself, we turn to a scheme. An incredibly elaborate, almost comical scheme.
Utterly bizarre, yes. But conceived, as it turns out, to mask something very significant, very criminal.
This is the famous case of the Red-Headed League and Mr. J. Biz Wilson.
A pawnbroker. A simple man whose only remarkable feature was his hair.
Which was?
Real bright, blazing, fiery red. Magnificent, apparently.
And it all starts with his assistant, right? Vincent Spaulding.
Yes. Spaulding shows Wilson an advertisement in the newspaper for the Red-Headed League.
And the job requirements are just weird.
Absurd, really. You needed that specific fiery red hair. You couldn't be married.
Why no wife?
Never really explained, just another layer of strangeness. And the hours were specific, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Which just happened to fit perfectly around the pawnbroker's own business hours.
Exactly, allowing him to be away from his shop for precisely that block of time.
And the job itself?
Copying the Encyclopedia Britannica, word for word.
Seriously. Just copying. That sounds mind-numbing.
Tedious, yes. But the pay.
Oh, the pay was amazing, wasn't it?
Incredibly generous. £4 a week for copying an encyclopedia for 4 hours a day.
But the conditions were really strict.
Very strict. If you leave, you forfeit your whole position forever. No excuse will avail.
Sounds too good to be true, which usually means.
It is too good to be true. But Wilson, tempted by the easy money, goes for it. He describes the scene outside the League office.
Packed with red-headed men.
Choked with red-headed folk, like a coster's orange barrow. But apparently only a few, like him, had the really bright flame-colored tint they wanted.
So he gets the job. And for weeks, he just sits there copying.
Dutifully copying away, wondering naturally what on earth the point of it all was.
But for Holmes, this whole setup, the weird job, the great pay, the specific hours, it's not just quirky, is it?
Not at all. It's an immediate, massive red flag. He smells a rat straight away, especially when Wilson mentions his assistant, Spaulding.
The one who pointed out the ad.
Yes. And the fact that Spaulding worked for half wages.
Why would he do that? A capable young man working for peanuts.
That's Holmes's question exactly. He starts digging into Spaulding. Learns he's small, stout-built, very quick. No facial hair, though he's about 30. Has a white splash of acid on his forehead.
Okay. Odd details.
And then Holmes gets really interested when he asks if Spaulding's ears are pierced for earrings.
Pierced ears. Why does that matter?
That connects to a known criminal Holmes is aware of. It's a tiny detail, but potentially huge.
So this job, offering so much for seemingly nothing, it has to be a cover for something else.
Absolutely. Holmes's antennae are buzzing. He knows there's a hidden agenda.
So Holmes decides he needs to see the place for himself, the on-site investigation.
Yes, and his observation is just meticulous. He goes to Saxe-Coburg Square, notes it's a bit run-down, poky little shabby genteel. The atmosphere itself seems blah.
Then he focuses on Spaulding again.
Specifically, his trousers. The knees.
What about them?
They're worn out, patched, and stained, which suggests
hard physical labor, not sitting at a desk copying things.
Precisely. It doesn't fit the story.
Then he does that strange thing with his stick.
Yeah.
Tapping the pavement.
Yes. Almost theatrical, like you said. But it's not random. He's listening. Trying to figure out the cellar. Does it go forward? Backward? How deep?
And he finds out.
It does not extend to the front of the building. Crucial information.
And finally, he checks out the neighborhood.
Yes. He notes the big city and suburban bank right next door to the pawn shop and a carriage building place nearby.
These details seem so scattered. Trousers, pavement, a bank.
To us, maybe? But for Holmes, they are the absolute essence of the problem.
And this is where he goes back and calls it a three-part problem, right?
Exactly. Indicating it needs serious thought, deep concentration. He sits for almost an hour, apparently, lost in thought, clouds of tobacco smoke filling the room.
Connecting all those little dots.
Until the solution suddenly sprung from him. He sees how the pieces fit, how their very strangeness points towards the hidden truth.
So what's the brilliant deduction? Let's break it down. First, the assistant, Spaulding.
The half-wages thing is the key. Why work for so little? Holmes figures he had some strong motive for securing the situation, something far more important than the pay.
Okay. Second, the Red-Headed League itself.
Pure distraction. The 4 hours Wilson was away every morning, the pointless copying, it was all just to get Wilson out of his own shop, out of the cellar specifically.
To keep him away while something else was happening downstairs.
Precisely. Removing him from the premises reliably every single day.
Third, the actual target. What was Spaulding doing in the cellar?
Well, Wilson mentions Spaulding's fondness for photography, which often meant using a darkroom, probably in the cellar, and his trick of vanishing into the cellar,
Okay.
combined with the worn knees on his trousers.
Digging.
Yes. And given the bank next door and the fact the cellar didn't go forwards.
The tunnel had to be going sideways.
Oh, well.
Towards the bank vault.
Exactly. From the pawnbroker's cellar right into the city and suburban bank's strong room.
And Spaulding. He wasn't just some random assistant.
No, Holmes identifies him as John Clay, a notorious criminal. Holmes calls him a murderer, thief, smasher, and forger. Highly intelligent, daring, master of disguise. Remember the pierced ears? That was one of Clay's known traits.
Wow. And his accomplice.
Duncan Ross, the redheaded man who ran the League office and hired Wilson, he was in on it too.
And the League suddenly closing down.
That meant the tunnel was finished. They were ready to break into the vault, probably that very night.
So the whole bizarre League was just an incredibly elaborate smokescreen for a bank robbery.
Perfect misdirection. Ingenious, really.
So Holmes figures this all out,
And
then
he acts fast. Contacts Inspector Lestrade from Scotland Yard and the bank director, Mr. Merriweather.
they set a trap.
They wait inside the bank vault that night. In the dark. Very. And just as Holmes predicted, John Clay breaks through the floor of the vault, tunnels right up into it.
And they grab him.
Holmes grabs Clay the moment he emerges. His accomplice tries to escape back down the tunnel, but is caught by another officer.
Caught red-handed. Brilliant deduction, perfect execution.
A testament to Holmes's method, seeing the pattern behind the absurdity.
It really is a perfect example of his idea that the most bizarre a thing is the less mysterious it proves to be.
Absolutely. What looked like pure fantasy, this weird league. It was actually a very logical, very calculated criminal plan.
It underscores that principle. Singularity is almost invariably a clue. If something is uniquely strange.
There's usually a very specific, often simple reason for it. It's not just random weirdness.
So the lesson for us, for you listening, look beyond the surface weirdness. Ask,
Yeah.
why this specific strange thing? What purpose could it possibly serve?
Yeah. If something seems too weird to be true, it's often hiding a simpler, perhaps darker truth right underneath.
Okay, for our final case today, we move into something really quite chilling. A tale of family secrets, terrible greed, and a truly horrifying murder method. Very unnatural, as Holmes would say.
We're at Stoke Moran, a decaying country estate, and we meet Miss Helen Stoner.
She comes to Holmes in absolute terror, doesn't she? Blanched with terror, her face drawn and gray.
Yes, she's terrified for her life, because her twin sister Julia died very mysteriously 2 years before.
And she thinks she's next.
The fear is palpable right from the start. Julia's very last words, gasped out just before she died, were,
Oh my God. Helen, it was the band, the speckled band.
words that their stepfather dismissed as just the wild talk of delirium, meaningless.
But now, Helen is engaged to be married. Just like Julia was before she died.
And she started hearing things at night, a low whistle, and sometimes a metallic clang.
The same sounds she heard around the time of her sister's death.
Exactly. It's this pattern, this recurrence that fills her with dread. She tells Holmes, it is fear, Mr. Holmes, it is terror. She knows something awful is happening again.
And the source of this dread, the antagonist, is their stepfather, Dr. Grimesby Roylott.
A man with a truly dark past. He lived in India for years.
And he actually killed someone there, didn't he? Beat his native butler to death.
Yes! Escaped the death penalty but served a long prison sentence. Helen describes him as incredibly fierce, quick-tempered, foul-mouthed.
And now he lives as a recluse on this rundown estate.
Surrounded by his exotic pets from India, a cheetah and a baboon that apparently roam the grounds freely.
Just adds to the menace, doesn't it? This violent man with dangerous animals, the whole atmosphere feels threatening.
And as is so often the case, there's a clear financial motive lurking beneath the surface.
Money again?
Always look for the money. The girl's mother left a will. Each daughter was to get a significant annual income, £250 a year, but only upon marriage.
Okay, so what about Roylott's income?
It had significantly decreased. Used to be over £1,000 a year, but now, due to falling agricultural prices, it was down to maybe £750.
So if both girls got married and took their £250 each,
He'd be left with a mere pittance, £250 a year. Not much for a man used to a grander life.
so Julia getting engaged, that was a direct threat to his finances.
A huge threat. And now Helen is engaged, giving him the very strongest motives, as Holmes puts it, for standing in the way.
It's cold. calculating.
Yeah.
Killing his stepdaughters to keep their inheritance.
Driven purely by greed.
And the crime scene itself, Julia's bedroom, is presented as a locked room mystery, right?
Yeah.
Impossible to get in or out.
Exactly. Designed to make it look like Julia died of natural causes, or maybe fright. Holmes insists on seeing it himself.
And Helen is now sleeping in that same room.
Yes, because Roylott has started some supposed repairs on her bedroom wall, which Holmes later realizes are completely fake. Just an excuse to move her into Julia's room. The death trap.
Chilling. What does Holmes find in the room?
Several key things. There's a bell rope hanging near the bed. But it's a dummy. It's not connected to any bell.
A fake bell rope. Why?
It leads up to a small ventilator grill high on the wall, a ventilator that connects directly to Dr. Roylott's room next door.
Ah, connection between the rooms.
The crucial one. And the bed. It's clamped to the floor, bolted down.
Why would a bed be bolted to the floor?
To ensure it couldn't be moved, it had to stay in exactly the same position relative to the ventilator and the bell rope.
And the windows?
Solid iron shutters, built firmly into the massive masonry. Absolutely impossible for anyone to get in or out that way. A perfect sealed room. And then Holmes examines Roylott's room next door and finds more strange clues.
What does he find there?
A small saucer of milk,
Okay.
a small dog lash like a little whip tied into a loop at the end,
A whip?
and a great iron safe.
A safe, milk, and a whip. What could that possibly mean?
This is where Holmes's broad knowledge comes in, his understanding of, as he puts it, creatures from India. He starts to put these bizarre pieces together. The milk isn't for a cat, the lash isn't for a dog, the safe isn't just for papers.
He sees them as tools, instruments in the crime.
Exactly. He's connecting the ventilator, the clamped bed, the dummy rope, the milk, the lash, the safe, and his knowledge of Roylott's time in India. The picture is forming.
So Holmes and Watson decide to spend the night in Helen's room, Julia's old room, to wait for whatever comes.
Yes, a night of suspenseful waiting, in total darkness, just waiting, listening.
And they hear it,
They hear the low whistle that Helen described.
the signal.
And then another sound, a gentle, soothing sound, like that of a small jet of steam escaping continually from a kettle, accompanied by a faint, peculiar smell.
What does Holmes do?
The moment he hears that second sound, he springs up, lights a match, and furiously attacks the bell rope with his cane, lashing out at whatever is coming down it.
And then?
A terrible sound from the next room. A dreadful, a high-ringing scream of agony. Roylott's scream. They rush into Roylott's room, and there he is, dead.
And the speckled band?
Coiled around his head. A snake. A foul and venomous swamp adder, one of the deadliest snakes in India. The speckled band wasn't a band of cloth or gypsies. It was a snake.
My God, so Holmes's lashing drove it back through the ventilator.
Exactly. Angered, perhaps injured, it turned on the first person it encountered. Its master, Roylott.
Poetic justice.
Yeah.
Killed by his own murder weapon.
The ultimate irony. All the pieces click into place in that horrifying moment. The whistle, the milk, the lash, the safe, the ventilator, the rope. It all makes terrible sense.
That is a truly chilling aha moment. So twisted, so unnatural.
And Holmes admits his initial theory about the gypsies Roylott allowed on his land. Maybe they're spotted handkerchiefs. That was wrong.
But he was willing to discard it when the facts didn't fit.
That's key to his method. He realized no one could get in or out through the window or door. The danger had to come through the only connection, the ventilator.
So the dummy bell rope was just a ladder for the snake. A bridge, as he calls it.
Yes, lower down from the ventilator to the bed.
And the bed being clamped down ensured the snake would land right on the sleeping victim.
Precisely. The whistle was Roylott's signal to call the snake back up the rope before morning.
And the milk was its reward for coming back.
Yes, a sinister training method. And the safe was where he kept it.
And the cause of death, the snake bite.
The two little dark punctures from the fangs would be incredibly hard to detect back then, especially if no one suspected poison.
So it would look like deaths from natural causes?
Or maybe fright?
Or, as the coroner eventually ruled in Roylott's case, death from indiscreetly playing with a dangerous pet. The perfect crime, almost untraceable.
Using, as Holmes says, a form of poison which could not possibly be discovered by any chemical test available then.
It just shows the horrifying results when intelligence and knowledge are turned purely to evil. The extraordinary, bizarre evil hidden in a quiet country house. Wow. What incredible journeys today. From a respectable man secretly being a beggar.
To that ludicrous job ad hiding a bank robbery.
And finally, a deadly snake used as a murder weapon through a ventilator. It really peels back the layers on everyday life, doesn't it?
It really does. And these cases, as Holmes often pointed out, show that the strangest and most unique things are very often connected not with the larger, but with the smaller crimes.
Or sometimes, like with St. Clair, maybe not even strictly criminal in the legal sense.
Right. He firmly believed that for strange effects and extraordinary combinations, we must go to life itself, which is always far more daring than any effort of the imagination. Real life is stranger than fiction.
And maybe the biggest lesson, the one that sticks with you, is this idea that there is nothing so unnatural as the commonplace.
hmm It's an encouragement for all of us, for you listening too, to sharpen our own observation skills.
To not just glance, but to really see, to notice the details.
What seemingly trivial thing, what oddity you might encounter today, could actually unlock a surprising truth if you just stop and think about it. Question the obvious.
Keep your eyes peeled, keep your mind open.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the singular, the strange, and the utterly revealing.
This has been the Uncanny Valley Podcast.